Now, Nigeria is witnessing a growing wave of cyber attacks as security experts warn that criminals are becoming more sophisticated and increasingly targeting individuals, businesses, and critical institutions. Recent reports show a sharp rise in incidents including phishing, identity theft, ransomware, and banking fraud, with thousands of attacks recorded weekly across the country's digital networks. Analysts say the rapid expansion of internet access, mobile banking, and digital platforms has widened Nigeria's exposure, making it a key target in Africa's cybercrime landscape. Authorities also note that many of these attacks are now powered by advanced tools, including artificial intelligence, allowing cybercriminals to launch more convincing scams and breaches. Security agencies have stepped up enforcement and awareness campaigns, urging stronger digital hygiene, improved cybersecurity systems, and greater public vigilance as the threat continues to grow.
On the show this morning, we're joined live from our Lagos studio by Mr. Tope Aladenusi, Africa's cybersecurity leader at Deloitte, bringing deep expertise in cyber risk, digital security strategy, and enterprise protection across the continent. He has worked extensively with organizations and governments on strengthening cyber resilience, data protection, and response to evolving online threats in today's fast-growing digital environment. He will be breaking down the rising wave of cyber attacks in Nigeria, what's driving the trend, and what individuals, businesses, and institutions must do to stay protected. Mr. Aladenusi, thank you for joining us live. It's quite delightful to have you this Monday morning on Daybreak.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Now, against the backdrop that we've been able to come up with the Cybersecurity Act of 2024, and yet we still have this rapid incident attacks on financial institutions. My checks suggest that we have over 1 million annually in the attacks on financial institutions. What is responsible for this incident attacks in Nigeria?
All right, thank you. That's a very good observation. I would say what is responsible is because Nigeria is now a digital heavyweight across, when you compare Nigeria with other countries across the globe. Now, what that means is that if you look at the countries that process payments in real time digitally, Nigeria is ranked among the top 10 globally. In fact, I think we are about number 6. So when we process from, I think, reports that have been shared online by some news agency, we process about 11 billion transactions in real time annually. Now, so we are among the top 10 when it comes to the volume of transactions that we process. But now, when it now comes to cybersecurity maturity, according to the International Telecommunication Union, the ITU, the Global Cybersecurity Index report shows that Nigeria is ranking around mid-tier, from about 60 to 80 in the world. So in terms of volume, you are in the top 10, but in terms of cybersecurity maturity, you are in 60 to 80. So that gap is what attackers are trying to exploit. So it shows that the technology and the advancement in technology is not moving at the same pace with the advancement in cybersecurity. And that is the gap that cyber attackers are trying to exploit. They're trying to see how to, steal from organizations, commit fraud, and do various attack mechanisms just to see that they enrich themselves, because in a sense we are like a low-hanging fruit when you compare ourselves with other countries in the world.
Now, talk to us about an area that touches everybody, essentially, and that's to do with our banking sector. There's so many incidents and so many trends. We've heard so many reports and stories about all these breaches. Are Nigerian banks truly secure?
Well, Nigerian banks are doing a lot when you compare with other countries. I'm privileged to lead cybersecurity for Deloitte in Africa, and that has given me opportunity to work with several countries across Africa. And I've also been able to see what other countries across the globe are doing as far as cybersecurity is concerned. So Nigeria banks, compared to other banks in the world, I will say they are doing a lot, but there is still a lot to be done. Because if you look at the kind of exposures that we are having, the kind of cyber attacks that Nigerian banks are experiencing, and the kind of breaches that are being reported. Some of them you would think that by now we should have outgrown them. So as far as cyber attack is concerned, every company, every bank will be attacked. But what we want is a situation whereby we make it very difficult for cyber attackers to be able to penetrate our banks. So comparatively, we are not doing bad, but we need to do much more, because the wave of attack, the scale of attack, and the sophistication of the attack, they are increasing, especially with the advent of AI. What used to take about 3 months, attack that would take about 3 months to launch, now take about 3 hours. So banks cannot continue to operate the way they operated even last year, because every month things are changing very fast. So Nigerian banks will actually need to step up the game as far as cybersecurity is concerned.
Okay, now you've made a very interesting point about AI, artificial intelligence. And so now I want to ask you to update the viewers on what are the new trends that people should look out for that are somewhat scams that are now being played on innocent individuals.
That's a very good question, because many times the AI systems, they don't even attack organizations, they attack individuals. Now, let me talk about 2 common ways that they attack individuals. The first is phishing emails. Emails that are sent to people purportedly coming from unauthorized persons. For instance, emails, allegedly mimicking your bank or mimicking organizations that you do business with. And they can try to suggest or trick an average Nigerian to click a link, to send their password, or to send an OTP. Now, I think Nigerians should know that no bank will ever ask you to, submit your OTP or to submit your password. So what happens is that those emails, they use AI to craft it such that it looks exactly as the email that will come from your bank, or other institutions that you deal with. And when you see it, you cannot tell it's a fake email, because AI has analyzed the mail that will ordinarily come from your bank, and they will try to, replicate it, to look exactly like that. That's number one. Another one is deep fakes. Now, we have seen instances where there are a lot of promos out there, videos out there, job scams out there, purportedly coming from various organizations. And they can actually clone anybody's face. They can take your face, take your image, take your video, and take your voice, and make you to say something that you never said. And when you listen to that video, it will look as though you are listening to the actual person that you thought was speaking. So for instance, if an AI wants to mimic me now, they will take my face, my videos, my voice, and it will look exactly like me. So we need to be careful to ensure that we don't, take things as surface value. Not everything that you see on the web are things that you should trust. We should have this, habit of probing further, because AI is making fake to look so real right now. Thank you.
When you look at this, you've highlighted the massive shift into digital banking, and also I would want to add that there is also a rise in insider threats that is giving rise to this exposure in the cyber attacks. So what institutional safeguards should be adopted to mitigate this rising wave of cyber attacks?
Yeah, good question. So you talked about, you talked about insider threats and cyber attack. Globally, it is reported that about
the safeguard, the adoption of, the need to adopt an institutional safeguard.
Yeah, so every company is different, and the risks that we all face are different. Now, right now, cyber attackers are attacking every kind of organizations, whether small, medium size, or large. In the past, they used to focus on financial service institutions like the banks, and they were 600% times more attacked than other organizations. But right now, this is like a level playing field, because they can attack a company, they can steal their data and ask to pay ransom. And if you don't pay ransom, they can go online to publish the data. And there's already a regulation by the our data protection regulation that says if you don't handle your customers' data properly, you can pay up to 2% of your annual revenue as fine. You know, so companies are really exposed right now. So whether you are in any industries, you are exposed. So what do we need to do? First of all, we need to do an assessment and say, what are the risks that we're exposed to? The risk that a bank faces is different from the risk that an oil company faces, is different from the risk that a telecom company faces, is different from the risk that Arise will face, for instance. So everyone needs to assess their risk to say, how are we exposed? You know, what are the exposures? What are the kind of attack that we are susceptible to? And if these attacks materialize, what do we stand to lose? Then based on that, we can also do what I call a cybersecurity health check. Check yourself. The same way you go to the doctor and the doctor assess you and they tell you that you are fine or you are not fine. You also need to do a cybersecurity health check to check if you are doing well as far as cybersecurity is concerned. Now, many of the companies that have been breached in Nigeria, they never even knew they were breached. They've been breached for 6 months, they never knew. Some of them is when the attackers told them they were breached, or when their customers started complaining, that was when they were aware that they were breached. So you need to do like a breach assessment to know, and a cybersecurity health check to check how you are doing. Then after that, you come up with a strategy that makes you strong, that protects you from the attackers. And this strategy they are preventative in nature and also detective in nature. So in other words, a strategy that makes your system very difficult for cyber attackers to penetrate. But at the same time, because every company will be attacked and every company is likely to be breached, you also need to have robust systems that tells you when something has gone wrong. For instance, in the room you are right now, if somebody walks into that room, you can tell because it's all littered up and you can see when the door is open. The same way in the cyber world, there is a way to know when an attacker has penetrated you. So companies need to put strategies in place, framework in place, processes in place, as well as governance in place and implement technical controls that will prevent cyber attack, and also when cyber attack have happened to be able to detect and respond appropriately.
Some excellent points that you've shared there. And, rightly said, because I think even in Arise, we've had a few instances where some people who work for the channel have been impersonated by some sort of deep fake that goes viral, either asking people for money or making some sort of outlandish claims. But as well, I think what is really scary is one of the reports that we held earlier from the Nigerian Revenue Service, which described a misleading and false viral story about new vehicle tax that was being imposed. Now, I recall seeing this over the weekend, as many people probably did. And if it were not for the press statement that they put up, I'm very certain that a lot of people would have fallen for this scam. Now, how can we protect ourselves better? I know you've mentioned a few things, but if so many agencies of the federal government are being infiltrated as well, where does that put the everyday person? How can we now tell what is real or fake? You spoke about, walking into a studio and being able to see that this person is not meant to be there. But in the real world and realistically, how can we now protect ourselves as individuals against these scams?
Well, I would say everyone needs to be cyber literate. The same way you can look at your bank account and you can tell when there is a debit and when there is a credit and when something has gone wrong, because you have some level of financial literacy, no matter how low you are in the society. The world has gone so advanced that we all need to have some level of cyber literacy, which involves not divulging your information, for instance, to anybody. Nobody should ask you for your password or call you to trick you that they're from your bank and asking you for your information. It involves you having a very strong password. It involves you having what I call a two-factor authentication, which means that apart from your password, there's another way you can authenticate, like maybe using a PIN or your biometrics. So everybody should try to have this multi-factor authentication on their systems, on their phones, and even their banking platforms. Then we should also be vigilant. Don't take things at surface level. When people send you email, when you see something online, don't be too quick to believe it. Verify from the source. So if somebody says it's coming from Arise, go to Arise website or Arise social media handle. Don't just accept it, something that is posted on any forum and you take it. So there are a lot of things we need to do as far as cyber hygiene is concerned. Make sure that your software, they are updated, because if you have your phone, for instance, and the software is not updated, that phone is susceptible to cyber attack, easily susceptible to cyber attack, because it's saying that it has a flaw, and attackers are aware of the flaw. The software company has sent the patch, but you have not applied the patch. So make sure you update the softwares of your phones and the apps you use when they are released. So there are a number of things to be done, but the whole idea is that we all need to be cyber literate. We need to take it very seriously, because the money that we have spent several years making can be lost overnight. And there is no point, spending time amassing wealth, and you can lose at the click of a button.
Well, thank you, Mr. Tope Aladenusi, Deloitte's head of Africa cybersecurity. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Daybreak on Arise News. I think you've made a lot of insightful contributions that the cyber world offers the super highway to the future, but it has come with a collateral risk that everyone must stand up against. Thank you very much indeed. And that's all we have time for here on Daybreak. I'm Benga Ashiru. Have a most pleasant day.
And I'm Yolanda Robert. Thanks for watching at Daybreak today. Goodbye.